What's that smell? Buttered popcorn? No, it's the Popcorn Podcast, and also the popcorn that you have in your microwave.
It's the podcast that goes as well with movies as popcorn. It's the Popcorn Podcast.
I'm Tim Ifland, movie buff.
And I'm Leigh Livingstone, entertainment journalist.
And that was comedic group Auntie Donna you heard at the top of the episode, who star as corpses in the blockbuster film we are discussing today.
Which is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, which is based on the wildly popular 50-year-old role-playing fantasy game and follows a charming thief and a band of unlikely adventurers who embark on an epic quest to retrieve a lost relic. On their journey, they meet new friends, battle magical beasts, and come up against ruthless villains.
Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves is directed by John Francis Daley, who's an actor of Freaks and Geeks fame, and John Goldstein, who directed Game Night, which is a comedy that you and I both love. I'm
yes.
assuming, yeah,
yes,
we both like that one.
Film, yeah.
And he also co-wrote Spider-Man: Homecoming and Horrible Bosses with Daley.
Yeah, they're a great screenwriting duo.
Indeed.
The screenplay is by Daley and Goldstein, along with Michael Gillow.
And the film stars Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Regé-Jean Page, Justice Smith, Sophia Lillis, Hugh Grant, Chloe Coleman, Daisy Head, Mark Bonanno, Broden Kelly, and Zachary Ruane, a.k.a. Auntie Donna.
Local stars there for us.
Local stars who you met on the red carpet of the Australian premiere of D&D not so long ago.
That is correct. And if you want to check out that red carpet coverage, which we recommend you do, it's over on YouTube right now.
Absolutely. Now, Leigh, I'll start with this because I think it's quite important regarding your own personal viewing experience is your relationship and knowledge of the game that this film is based on, the Hasbro board game, of which I have none whatsoever.
Yes.
Have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons?
I have not played it, but I am quite familiar with it through pop culture, things like, Stranger Things. It became quite popular recently, being featured in there. Also in Freaks and Geeks, which is a great series. Yeah, so I'm kind of familiar with the concept and the characters, but no, I haven't played it.
Yeah, see, I went in completely blind, other than the reference, which you're so right, with Stranger Things. The kids play it, I think, in episode 1. It's one of the first things we see them do as a collective, as a group, bringing that friendship together, which many are formed around the game of Dungeons and Dragons. I've got mates who have played it over time. But there's also been quite a few movies made over the years. I have never seen any of those either.
I have seen the 2000 movie and it's quite terrible. It had an absolutely awful, scathing reception. It was a flop. It made something like $34 million from a budget of $45 million. So that tells you everything you need to know.
It's got a sting. That had Jeremy Irons in it, didn't it?
It did, yep.
Yeah.
It also had Marlon Wayans in it, in a character that was considered quite racist and offensive. So it doesn't come off well.
Right. So they weren't off to a very good start with the adaptations in movie land.
And then I think there were TV special sequels.
Okay.
That came along with that. And those TV special sequels led to a legal battle over the rights.
What is it with movie rights with certain IP? So this one has been caught in that sort of nightmare.
It's been stuck in production hell for about 10 years.
Shit.
With early legal battles between Hasbro and the producers of that 2000 original film. But eventually it came and landed on Daley and Goldstein's desk in 2019, which was a few years ago now as well. And then they've shaped it into what it is today.
There we go. Well, there's a bit of a history lesson on Dungeons and Dragons. Thank God you're here, Leigh.
Yeah. So do you think if you don't have a knowledge of the Dungeons and Dragons game, you won't enjoy this film? Is that what you're getting at?
Look, I guess there was a level of an enjoyment that I took out of this film just based on it being a fantasy adventure flick and the things that did well or didn't do well. I actually found the film, if you take all those other ingredients and histories out of it, I think it's quite an accessible fantasy adventure movie. I don't think there are things in there that are going to go over your head. However, I think there is a certain enjoyment in, if you are a fan and you know the lore and the history and the scope and scale of the world, that you'll get so much more out of it. I saw it with my husband Josh, and there were certainly people in the audience who were reacting at times that I thought were interesting times to react. But
You're like,
obviously, what did I miss something? Did I have a micro sleep? But clearly I put that down to them recognizing a place or a character or a moment or a cameo or whatever that just went over my head.
It's very jargon heavy in relation to the games in terms of the language used. If you're not a D&D diehard, it's true, you might struggle to follow along sometimes with some of that dialogue and those references. But yeah, I think you can enjoy the action and fun without fully understanding what they're talking about, because it's a good time, this film, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, look, it was a good time. There were ingredients in the movie that didn't quite add up for me. And
Okay.
I have a feeling that you're more on the I actually quite enjoyed that movie fence.
I was quite surprised at how much I enjoyed it, because I thought, with fantasy films, sometimes they lean too heavily into the piss take or like the meta kind of winks at the genre that are a little, take the source material and turn it into something a bit too goofy.
Okay.
Maybe, or they can go the other end and they can take it way too seriously.
Way too seriously, yeah.
And I think this film really walks the line very well between those two. And what's interesting for fans of the game D&D is that most of the characters are unique to the movie, but they're based on a class of character from the game. So you've got the bard, who's Chris Pine. You've got the fighter or the barbarian, which is Michelle Rodriguez. The druid, Sophia Lillis. The sorcerer, the rogue, Hugh Grant. The paladin, Regé-Jean Page. So then these characters that they're playing are not from the games, but they're inspired by a class of character from the games.
And do you think that's a successful way of adapting something like a board game into the world of movies?
I do, because in the game, you can choose your own character. And so there's this freedom to stay true to the source material but get creative with their own characters and their dynamics in this film. And I can't wait till we talk about the characters and their dynamics, because that's something I really enjoyed.
Yeah, okay. Look, going back to the story, I suppose, in terms of the ingredients, now you mentioned about the balance of humor, like the goofiness, obviously with Chris Pine leading the charge in that sort of charismatic sense. A la Guardians of the Galaxy, Chris Pratt. I was just synergies there.
Chris Pine is a legend at the goofy hero, isn't he?
It's what he gets out of bed and gets paid millions of dollars to do and be and do it well. The line that I don't think, or the balance I don't think they got right here, and this just comes down to the tone of the movie. Yes, I found some of it quite funny, and that balance in terms of it not taking itself too seriously, but also establishing a world that was interesting and engaging and compelling. But then they tried to pull on the heartstrings of the world, and I didn't believe that basically the heart of the story, which is about a father trying to get back his daughter, the backstory was just like shoved in there to make you feel something, but then they were trying to be funny about it and go on this adventure, and things go wrong. Obviously they betrayals along the way and all sorts of characters and fighting and such like, but then we're meant to believe it's a father-daughter film. I just didn't feel that connection or believe that in any way.
I will agree with you there. The tone is a little all over the shop sometimes, but I think that's actually the point, because the game is quite a silly game.
Okay, that's good to know.
One of the characters in the game, I think, is like a brain with legs or something like that. Like, it's a bit silly. It is a bit silly. And they have to add some character development and some backstory to help flesh it out. And I didn't have a problem with the father-daughter story. I think they could have done a bit more with it even, because throughout the film, there's this MacGuffin piece of relic that they're searching for constantly, at the beginning at least, and then it isn't really relevant to the story or their motivations later on. It's still there. It's kind of still there, but it's kind of sidelined pretty quickly for then Edgar Chris Pine's real motivation, which is his daughter.
You are right, this movie was a bit of fun, harmless fun, but it was trying to do too much. It wasn't really sure what sort of movie it was wanting to be. Is it a father-daughter, heartfelt, my wife died because of something that I did shtick? Sorry, that was really callous of a way of putting that, but just trying to get it out. But is it a motley crew of people coming together, bumbling their way through saving the day?
But that's what I was saying earlier, that they're walking that line of making it a really fun adventure flick and also giving it a bit of heart, taking it a little bit more seriously. It's marketed as being a funny film, and you think, okay, sure, yeah, funny film. You roll your eyes and think, oh God, it's just going to be shoehorning jokes into everything like Thor, Love and Thunder or
Oh, God.
something
Stop bringing
like
up
that.
Thor, Love and Thunder.
But I found myself chuckling along with it. I thought it was quite funny. And I guess the plot is also the same as the game, which is you have a quest, you come up against a random obstacle that's probably not realistic, and you have to pivot and find a solution on the spot. So the film or the story itself is like a dungeon master in the real game, throwing plot twists out here and there or hither and thither, as the characters would say.
Hither and thither.
Hither and thither.
Jesus.
Just basically to screw with the players and make the game more interesting. And I feel like that's what the film did. Because sometimes I found myself towards the end going, like, it was a real quest. What are they doing? Like 1 minute they're here, 1 minute they're there, 1 minute this is happening, 1 minute that's happening. Like there's a lot going on. So I can see how you would say it's a bit all over the shop, but I think that's kind of the point of the game.
Look, this is such good context because it helps me pull the film together in a very different way. However, does it make it okay? I actually don't think so because I still felt the disconnect, the disjoin. And, you know, this movie is 2 hours and 14 minutes long, which is long.
It is.
And there's like a conclusion to this movie, like without spoiling anything, like it is done.
Yeah.
And then just to play on what you mentioned before, or another plot twist and something,
Yeah.
there's also like a whole other subplot not really being explored. They're kind of dangling in it. And that, in fact, is the proper climax of the movie that is still to happen when you think everything's wrapped up and done. And so I thought, oh, shit. Even though that was a really enjoyable part of the movie and some of the fight sequences, action sequences, which we'll talk about later, were stunning, I thought, oh, but this movie was over.
Yeah.
And we're just being thrown back in again.
And I think that could have been a good place to end it too. I know exactly what you're talking about because the character that they go back to fight, who raises the stakes into this world-ending all of a sudden event, could have been left on the sideline because it wasn't really super relevant all the way through.
Yeah, or it could have happened earlier on in the movie. It could have been woven in a little differently, but it literally felt like one book was closed and they thought, oh, should we wait to do this in the next movie? No, let's do it now. And they just open up the book again and keep going. That's what it felt like for me.
Yeah, the story deviates in a lot of different directions sometimes, and there isn't a lot of time for character backstories. But I felt the world building of this fantasy IP was really, really solid.
So there was enough in there to keep you interested?
Yes.
Okay. Because one of my things that I took away...
Owlbear. What a great invention.
I've written Owlbear is badass in my notes.
Owlbear.
Owlbear. Honestly,
Exactly what it sounds like. An owl and a bear.
An owl and a bear, and you will be terrified and absolutely delighted at the same time.
If I'm going to throw a criticism out there, I will say there isn't a lot of dungeons or dragons. I mean...
State the obvious fuck.
I mean, there is. There's a dragon.
There's a dragon, a shonky dragon.
Yeah, which I was a little disappointed was played for comedy rather than menace.
Yeah, well, because what's in a name? Dungeons and Dragons, you think you're going to be handed that terrifying dragon in a cave. But that ain't the case in this film.
No. Or like mythical beasts, which we do get a few. I don't want to
Which are cool.
downplay it. We do get a few, but I expected a bit more of that fantastical nature. It's a bit more grounded, if that makes sense. Can you say that about a fantasy film? It's a bit more grounded.
I mean, that's rich. Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a grounded fantasy epic. I'm not sure you'll read that anyway.
The character development is very gritty and believable.
Emotional, stakes high. Not really for me. But also, just to pull on your point a bit more, dragons, light on the dragon front. How many dungeons did you actually count? Because
I didn't count them, but I felt like there wasn't a lot.
How do you categorize a dungeon? Because they go to, sandstone corridors and things like that. Is that a dungeon? I don't know. Maybe the prison at the beginning of the movie is considered a dungeon, but that's just one and done at the top of the film.
Yeah.
Improvements on the sequel. More dungeons, please.
More dungeons. They focused more on the spectacular landscapes.
Oh, beautiful.
Like the locations are fantastic. I can't wait till we talk about that. But let's start with the characters and the performances.
Now, go on. I want to hear what you thought of Chris Pine. Because I know you're a huge fan.
Am I?
Yeah. Are you?
I love when you come out with these factoids and I'm like, am I?
I'm just saying, you're a huge fan, aren't you, Leigh?
Am I? he's not bad.
He's not bad. He's
As
all
far
right.
as the Chris's go,
As
he's
far
one
as
of the better
Chris's
ones.
go, that's right. He's better than Chris Pratt at the moment. Yeah, that's for sure.
Look, he plays the handsome, flawed hero very well. This is a role he's born to play. He's self-deprecating. He doesn't take too much seriously. It's what you would expect from a Chris Pine performance in this film. I enjoyed the emotion and the heart around the father-daughter storyline.
Look, see, just on that, I think from a character development and hooking you into that relationship, I think what this film lacked was... they lent too much on the montages early on in the movie to establish who the characters were and their relationships, and then they jumped to the present, basically. And I think there was a scene or two missing between the father and the daughter to create some sort of on-screen connection, because everything else is past tense. You know, you have a daughter in the present who resents her father because she's been told something about him, and she's taking it on face value, which is, I guess, a maturity thing. She's a young girl. You believe what an adult tells you, but it just didn't make me believe that he had this beautiful relationship with her that he was trying to make you sort of latch onto. And
yeah, I can see what you're saying, because I guess he didn't. She was closer with Michelle Rodriguez's character,
True.
Holga. I want to talk about her. She is kick-ass.
she's great.
She's the warrior character, but she's also nursing a broken heart. So that's her little deep, rich backstory under all that muscle and gruff exterior.
Yeah, she takes no shit. But as a result, she's quite stiff. So she plays the straight guy, so to speak, to Chris Pine's loud, quirky, witty, charming, fumble till you stand up and it was your plan all along type character.
You paint quite a picture there. I will say I really enjoyed the chemistry, though, between Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez, which is completely platonic.
Yep.
Like, they're not romantic. They don't give them a romantic relationship, but they make a really great pair of companions who are just complete opposites. And they play off each other so well and have great comedic timing, I thought.
Yeah, they were good. They were good with the words given with each other. And it's really refreshing that you have a male and a female lead in a film that doesn't lead to will they, won't they kiss or get together. I think that's really important, that they can stand alone in their own world, have their own sort of emotional stakes, him with his wife, her with her lost love, I guess, that didn't quite work out. Is that a spoiler if we talk about who shows up as her lost love?
Yes, I think it is. I didn't put that in my notes. We're not going to reveal who that is, but there is a special little cameo from an actor who hasn't been listed on IMDb either, which is quite fun, quite weird.
Like, they must be a fan of the board game or something.
Maybe.
Because it's such a weird piece of casting, but it was a really sweet performance.
Yeah.
Like, I thought they were really good. Anyway,
were.
that's something to get a kick out of when you watch the film, friends.
One thing I will say is that I love that the women are predominantly doing the fighting in this film, but it isn't hitting you over the head with, for lack of a better word, wokeness.
Yeah, sure. It's not, let's watch women kick ass. It's just women doing a job that the men can't do or completely avoid.
Yes.
Like Chris Pine in this one fight scene spends the entire time
having a chat
or trying to just get the rope off his arms. While Michelle Rodriguez is there like killing multiple armed men.
Yeah. So Michelle Rodriguez is one of those women, and also Sophia Lillis, who plays Druid Doric. She proves herself quite the little action star in this film. Doric's character is involved in some of the most visually dynamic sequences of the film. I think she's the one that transforms into the owlbear, which is just the greatest invention ever.
Yeah, I love it. Among many other animals along the way, there's some really thrilling sequences with her involved in it, which were really captivating. There was one visual, Leigh, that I couldn't get out of my head. I went into the movie because what she looked like on the poster, she looked just like Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, and it had to do with her red hair, also part of her complexion and just her look, but then also her costume. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because she kicked ass just like Natasha Romanoff does in the MCU, but I just kept thinking, oh God, she'd be a really good Black Widow.
It's funny that you mention MCU, because there is one fight scene moment in the film where she does a Mark Ruffalo Hulk as the owlbear, and she like slams someone into the ground, like what he does with Loki, like bang, 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 bang.
Yes, in Avengers. That was funny.
Yeah.
That was really, really
But that
funny.
made me immediately think of Avengers.
100%.
We've also got Justice Smith in there, who we've seen in Pokemon, of course.
Yep.
Who plays Simon, a sorcerer struggling with his self-confidence and image. And his narrative obstacles are all about overcoming a lack of proficiency and skill as a sorcerer.
Yes.
But he does get his moment to shine.
He's a bit of a shit wizard. I would actually call out that his character arc was the most obvious one and the cleanest and clearest one.
Yeah.
He was a really good character to follow because he had something to grapple with and something to overcome and something to prove and achieve. And Justice Smith is a really endearing character, and you don't consider him as an idiot, but someone who's just trying to do his best and not really getting there until hopefully what you hope for his character, that he ultimately arrives at that place.
We've also got Regé-Jean Page of Bridgerton fame, of course, who plays Zenk. Is that how you pronounce it?
Zenk.
Zenk, the righteous paladin, who briefly joins the team,
Yeah.
but then remains dedicated to his moral duties. He's very righteous.
Very righteous. Look, he just came in, swooped in and out with effortless charm,
He did.
charisma, pizzazz, if you will.
And this really deadpan delivery of his lines because he doesn't really do the funny stuff and
No.
the mucking around.
He takes everything literally.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed his character. Probably next to Justice Smith's performance, he
Yep.
was probably the most interesting.
Of course, you've got Hugh Grant as the rogue of the piece. You know, very unreliable kind of member of the squad in ways with morally abject motivations that become clear as the film goes on.
Yeah, the con man of the piece. I actually felt there was something missing in establishing the context of his character.
Right.
Just like the daughter of Kira not having screen time to establish the relationship with her father early on, there was something about that motley crew of assembled wizards and warriors and con men that they just skated over, and it was more past tense. This is what we were like, and I can't believe I thought I trusted you. It was more talking in the past than the present, and you just meant to connect the dots yourself.
There's a whole thing with Sophia Lillis's character about her entire species or community
Yes.
being destroyed, which would have been rich ground to explore. But because there's so many characters, it's really hard to dive into them all.
Yeah, it's a hard balance. Just on Hugh Grant, like you can just tell how much fun he's having with this character, and also just in his career at the moment in general.
Yeah.
He is literally living his best life in Guy Ritchie's filmography right now.
Yes.
Just playing that sort of like that funny, wacky, just comes in and out, fucks shit up and leaves character. And
Despicable kind of characters.
yeah,
yes.
really evil and despicable, real character-driven pieces.
I would actually use the word cad to describe most of his roles in Guy Ritchie's movies and in this film.
Yes.
Rogue cad. It's very fitting.
Very fitting indeed.
Yeah. Then we've also got Daisy Head's Sophia, who is a powerful wizard with a secret agenda. She turns out to be a bit useless and uninteresting, I think,
Yeah.
in terms of a character. The character is used as a way to, like we said earlier, blow the stakes up into this world-ending capacity that I just really don't think was necessary.
I agree.
Although it did make for a fun climactic battle.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome. But she sat idle for too long in the movie
Yeah.
where things were just being, oh, but there's something sinister going on here. And all she did was wear a cape really well for a while, which turned black one moment, red the next. Thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
But there wasn't much that she was given to do or had
No.
much purpose with the story until the part 2 of the finale.
Yeah, and I think the motivations for her character weren't really clear until that point too.
Yeah.
That was kind of the jargon and the maybe D&D references that I wasn't getting.
Yes.
Like maybe you should know who this person is and her class of character and why we need to watch out for them.
That's a really good point. See, these are the things that fans of the board game would have really got a kick out of and would have been clued in on outside of just the general audience.
But for me, I needed a bit more explanation as to why we should care that she's so scary or
Yeah.
if she's even scary.
Yeah, me too.
I want to talk about that climactic battle just for a second because the action in that scene is really good. And I just love that they all work together to fight at once instead of that silly one-on-one, I'll just wait my turn fighting that happens in a lot of action movies.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
you thought, where did that character go for the last 5 minutes?
They've just been standing watching the...
Oh, they were tying their shoe or something.
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. But in this one, they all work together using their different skill sets to come at the villain at once.
Yes, which also plays into Chris Pine's character of making a plan.
Mm-hmm.
So it all feeds back to that whole
Yep.
thing where you think, oh God, they're a cohesive unit, but it was always part of the plan.
What did you think about the special effects in the film?
I don't know if it was the screen that I was watching, because you know how the quality of certain screens in cinemas are better than others, or whether there was a bit of Vaseline on the lens. I found, which is mildly concerning, I found a lot of the distance establishing shots to have some sort of glow to them, which took away the sharpness of the effects. It must have been something wrong with the screen. It must have been Vaseline on the lens, because it felt too intentional. And for me, it just took away the sharp edge that some of the far away effects could have delivered to make it more believable. The close-up stuff I felt was really good, how it was weaved in with the practical effects and the sets and things. But not every shot was a triumph for me. How did you feel about the special effects?
I didn't notice that, to be honest. I guess that some of the background shots would definitely be CGI. They would have to do that. But in terms of the locations and the sets, they were filmed in some spectacular locations in Northern Ireland and Iceland, which seems to be the go-to for medieval fantasy locations at the
Iceland
moment.
is the playground for that sort of genre.
But the locations really blew me away. I found myself getting totally caught up in that, and so maybe I didn't notice what was going on in the background.
I really appreciated the tangible sets and them building the actual villages that they were traveling through and the different nuances and aesthetics that came with it, which I felt were really compelling in terms of the world-building nature that Dungeons & Dragons must offer as a board game, which beautifully translate to screen. I just wish we got to spend more time in a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is a planned franchise and all those sorts of headlines that you would expect, but I wanted to spend more time. They seem to just boing, boing from one place to another.
Right.
And I wanted to just marinate in them a little more.
But there's a lot of action to squeeze into there.
Okay, one of my points was there wasn't much action in the front half of the film.
Yeah.
When they started fighting, I thought, this is cool. Oh my God, this is awesome. Wait, we've been watching for 45 minutes and no one's really thrown a punch until now. And I felt that a bit strange.
Well, because I guess the first part of the film was Chris Pine's character and Michelle Rodriguez's character. So you get her fighting his battles. She's like his bodyguard.
Yeah. She kind of is.
Yeah. I will always love you. And and so he avoids fighting wherever possible.
Yeah.
What did you think of the whole opening sequence with them in the prison
I
and how they got out of there? I found that quite funny.
I found that funny. And especially in basically they didn't need to go to the lengths that they did to get out, which was that kind of cherry on top for that whole setup, because you learned a lot about the characters in a really smart way within a concise set piece. You knew what he was like, you knew what she was like, and you kind of got a real good idea of why they ended up there to a certain extent. So it was a really impactful opening.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. It set the tone really well.
Yeah, 100%.
Which then went in 50 different directions, according to you.
Yeah, and it was and then an alphabetic soup from there on out.
Yeah. All right, shall we wrap up our review of Dungeons & Dragons, Tim?
Yeah. Look, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a pretty good time at the cinema, but I've already largely forgotten about it and could take or leave a sequel, to be honest. It ultimately plays it too safe in a genre that has endless possibilities for world building and compelling set pieces, but what we get here is a pretty run-of-the-mill plot that tries to make you laugh and care for characters you know nothing about, nor are convinced by their emotional turmoils. This struggles with a tone imbalance, which is a shame of what I've referenced. I'm going to rate Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves 2.5 popcorn kernels.
Really? That low?
Oh,
Look, that's pretty average.
That's pretty average. See,
That's pretty average.
generous. That's not an awful movie. I had a good time. It just wasn't great.
Well, filmmakers Daly and Goldstein have walked the line between taking this IP too seriously and sending it up. As I said, so often happens in the fantasy genre when filmmakers don't have a deep understanding of what makes an existing brand so beloved by fans. The cast, like a real D&D group of adventurers, all bring unique strengths to the table that work as a whole to create a fun, sometimes moving and entertaining franchise starter that can be enjoyed by non-D&D fans as much as die-hard devotees. It's a hit, in my opinion. I'm giving it 4 popcorn kernels out of 5.
Ooh.
I was going to go 3.5. I'm raising
Own
it
it.
up to 4.
I mean, you had a good time. I'm really happy for you.
I had a good time.
Great. Awesome. Well, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is in Australian cinemas from March 30, friends.
And make sure you check out our red carpet coverage of the Australian premiere over on YouTube, featuring local stars of the film, Auntie Donna, who we didn't really talk about too much. They play corpses in the local version of the film, so Americans probably won't get them.
They'll probably get another comedy group of some description. That was a really fun part of the movie for me.
It was.
I found that really good. And one thing that they did really well in this movie, we're not done, we're still talking about it, is the actual makeup of creatures and characters, like actors dressed up rather than CGI for certain things. I really appreciated that sort of Stan Winston work vibe where they choose to do stuff in camera when it makes sense to, which just adds a depth to the world. And the corpses were, real corpses. What am I trying to say? They were, real things. They were living things on screen rather than CGI, which was a good call.
And they were quite funny.
They were very funny.
Brought Auntie Donna's unique sense of humour to it.
Unique indeed.
All right, Tim, let's move on to the news. Kick us off.
All right, so Linda Blair is reportedly returning as Regan McNeil in Blumhouse and David Gordon Green's Exorcist sequel, which is set to release during Halloween season this year.
The original 1973 Best Screenplay Oscar winner followed a desperate mother, Chris McNeil, played by Ellen Burstyn, seeking the help of an exorcist when her young daughter Regan is possessed.
Now, the new cast will include Leslie Odom Jr. as a new desperate parent looking for a solution to his child's possession. This will lead him to track down Chris, with Burstyn already confirmed to return.
Yeah, so it would make sense that Linda Blair would be involved in that sequence in the film.
Yes.
With her mother.
I am really surprised yet relieved that Linda Blair is returning.
It's just going to be a cameo though, don't you reckon?
Surely. Yeah. Surely. Yes. I don't see she's going to be a huge player in the film.
I'm a tad disappointed that they're retreading the whole parent worried about their child who's possessed kind of thing.
But that's what requels do these days.
Yeah.
Isn't it? They basically remake the original.
Look, Halloween is done. David Gordon Green's got some time on his hands. He needs to move on to another franchise.
He does.
So images were leaked this week of Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn on the set of Joker Folie à Deux in New York City.
Oh my God, this made my week.
She looks so good.
Oh, chills. Chills. So the images give a glimpse of Harley's costume, which is a more classic take on her look, with a scarlet red jacket on top of a white shirt with black diamonds on it. And the eye makeup evokes Joaquin Phoenix's Joker style as well.
Yeah, so the sequel to the dramatic crime story Joker, which won Phoenix his Oscar, presents the continuation of Arthur Fleck's descent into madness, but with a musical twist.
Of course, when Lady Gaga's involved, she can't be mute.
Have you seen the video this week as well of her singing?
No.
It doesn't show her.
From the film?
Somebody has filmed outside of like a makeshift studio, and you can hear her singing.
Okay, tell me about it. What sort of vibe do you get?
You instantly recognise that it's Lady Gaga.
Of course you would.
But it sounds amazing.
Oh, is it jazz inspired? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm desperate to know.
Oh, I'm going to show it.
Yes.
I'm going to show you after this.
Oh my God. Okay. Back to the task at hand. It is the first superhero movie musical of its kind and allows for a creative deep dive into the twisted minds of the Joker and Harley Quinn as the duo falls in love at Arkham Asylum and plots to escape.
When you hear it in that kind of context, I think this is a really creative way to go.
I agree.
Fascinated to see because, in the first film too, we lived in his fantasy world for a lot of the time.
We did.
And so this is just a continuation of that.
Yeah, how does the fantasy manifest within the constraints of an asylum?
And when you add someone else to it.
Into the mix and him becoming infatuated and obsessed with someone else.
Yeah.
And it be Harley Quinn obviously makes sense in the lore of Joker and their relationship in the comics. Fuck. I'm really excited.
I wonder if she'll be playing his therapist like she does.
Oh, yes.
Or if she's a fellow inmate.
And I'm hoping that, even though it's really separate from a tone perspective, timeline perspective, but Margot Robbie playing Harley Quinn excellently in the Snyderverse version of the DCEU. You didn't really get much of the psychologist part.
No.
She was just Harley Quinn. So I'm hoping that they give time and attention to the demise and the mental manipulation that Joker has on Harley.
Well, it would be great if they did that, because certainly the first Joker didn't shy away from those really dark themes of mental illness and not getting the help that you need.
Yep.
And whether he could be helped or not, that's the point. This character, he can't be helped. Like, that's the point of the Joker, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd really love to see that backstory play out. And considering Joker was R-rated, if they go down the same path, we could very well see that.
How many R-rated musicals are there
Exactly.
in the world? That excites me a lot. And sorry, we're just going on here, but this is ripe for discussion, this whole movie. The fact that they're making a sequel and they seem to be, paving the way for a story that holds. But, could Joaquin walk away with a follow-up Oscar for his performance? Could Lady Gaga finally land that Oscar nod that she's been reaching for? Well, she's been nominated. Yeah. She's been nominated. She has won for Best Song and some movie. But, Shallow for, what was that called? Born This Way. No, what is it called? I'm a Star is Born.
I'm a Star is Born.
I'm a Star is Born. A Star is Born. Anyway, I'm a really big Lady Gaga fan, and I'm just getting flustered just manifesting this for her.
So the Joker sequel is due to dance onto screens in late 2024, so we've still got a while to go.
I know, that's the thing that stings.
The first film was quite controversial. It had really mixed reception, so this one I have no doubt will have the same.
It'll push some more buttons.
Yes.
No doubt. So Amir Questlove Thompson is about to make his feature film directing debut, get this, with a live-action hybrid reimagining of the Aristocats for Walt Disney Studios.
Yeah, so Questlove, who is the co-frontman, of course, of Jimmy Fallon's late show band The Roots, won the Oscar for Best Documentary last year with Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised.
And the Aristocats, of course, is the 1970 animation about an upper-class group of cats and the alley cat that helps them when they are kidnapped because they are due to inherit their owner's fortune.
It's interesting that it's going to be a live-action hybrid.
What does that mean, like CGI cats in a real world?
Yes, I think so.
Oh, God. Will there be a butthole cut of Aristocats?
Timothy.
Oh, fuck that movie. Just is the gift that keeps on giving. You know what? I've got a confession to make, a popcorn podcast confession that you will cast judgment on.
It's just you and me, so come on.
I've not seen the Aristocats, the animated film. I wasn't around in 1970.
Well, neither was I, but I've seen it. Come on.
So I will be watching the animated film before this.
Of course.
It seems random, but Questlove behind the project excites me.
I think it's going to be really cool. It's going to have a great soundtrack at least.
Absolutely, no doubt.
The MCU is currently struggling under the weight of superhero movie fatigue, says we.
Says we.
High expectations and an unclear direction. But there has come a piece of casting news that has certainly helped lift morale on this podcast. I jumped up and down and squealed with delight when I heard this.
I can just see it play out in my head. It was confirmed that Liv Tyler will be reprising her role as Betty Ross in Captain America New World Order. Yeah, exactly. Insert woo girl sentiment here. So something fans have been waiting for ever since her appearance as the character right at the very beginning of the MCU in 2008's The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, that's right. She starred in the second MCU film alongside Edward Norton as Bruce Banner, Hulk as his love interest, and the daughter of General Ross, also known as Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. Ross was then and went on to be played by William Hurt in several MCU films over the years, but Hurt's sudden sad death in 2022 has led to the character's recasting.
Yes, by none other than Mr. Harrison Ford, we might add. So we will be seeing Ford in his first gig as General Ross in the third Captain America sequel, alongside his on-screen daughter Betty for the first time in 15 years.
Do you know what's really funny? So, I love Harrison Ford in this role. I think it's a great choice.
Agreed.
But Thunderbolt Ross, his most defining feature as a character is his mustache.
Oh yeah.
And Harrison Ford isn't doing the mustache. And I just feel like that's such a fuck you Harrison Ford moment where he's just like, I'm not doing a mustache.
Actually?
I've seen some pictures from the set. He doesn't have a mustache. Unless they're going to Superman CGI that shit on.
Oh my God, no. Oh no, Henry Cavill mustache gate. Oh Jesus, I still have nightmares.
But that just seems so Harrison Ford, doesn't it? He's like,
100%.
This is what the character has. Screw that.
That is a reality I can believe, but I'm hoping that the images that you have seen are him walking to set before he's had his moustache added in the chair. Oh, that's disappointing. That actually annoys me.
Really?
Yeah, I want the moustache.
But it's Harrison Ford. He
Yeah,
can
true.
do whatever the hell he wants.
And we'll let him do it. it.
So Captain America New World Order and the return of Liv Tyler will be in Australian cinemas from May of 2024. I'm just so curious as to how they're going to weave her back into this story because she hasn't even been mentioned. And
She hasn't?
has Bruce Banner already met her or will he meet her now? Are they going to bring Mark Ruffalo's Bruce Banner into this story? Like, what's going on?
Well, my understanding is the Mark Ruffalo Bruce Banner is the Edward Norton one. So it was just recast. It's not a different character or a different version. It was just Edward Norton moved on and they just put Mark Ruffalo in there. So,
But in terms of canon,
yeah,
is she his long-lost love interest?
maybe.
Or have they not met yet?
Have they not met yet? Time will tell. Time will tell.
Because they gave him that romance with Natasha Romanoff.
Yeah, or maybe she'll come in and be like, what was that with Black Widow?
Yeah.
Bitch.
Exactly.
Like, come on, leave me alone. She's dead.
Exactly.
Maybe that's why she's swooping in.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, that's sinister. All right, let's talk about some trailer releases we got this week. Now, the Trolls franchise has no end in sight with its third film, Trolls Band Together.
Yeah, Poppy, voiced by Anna Kendrick, and Branch, voiced by Justin Timberlake, are back and they're now officially, finally, a couple. And as they grow closer, Poppy discovers that Branch has a secret past. He was once part of her favourite boy band, Brozone, with his 4 brothers, voiced by Troye Sivan, Eric Andre, David Diggs, and Kid Cudi.
Now, how the story goes is that Brozone, which, sorry, is just awful, disbanded when Branch was still a baby.
Okay, sorry, stop. I have to stop you there. This boy band that was incredibly popular in this Trolls universe were babies?
Oh, wait. Yeah, that's really uncomfortable.
What?
Talk about stage moms.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exploitative.
Yeah.
The world of Trolls. Nothing's off limits. Okay, so they disbanded. Was still a baby. That's actually so funny. As did the family. And Branch hasn't seen his brother since. But when Branch's bro Floyd is kidnapped for his musical talents by a pair of pop star villains, voiced by Amy Schumer and Andrew Renales, Branch and Poppy embark on an emotional journey to reunite the other brothers and rescue Floyd from a fate worse than pop culture obscurity.
The premise is quite cute, though, isn't it? And it's very meta because
Yes.
of the very obvious connection that Justin Timberlake has had in his career as a member of boy band NSYNC.
Yes.
Oh, God, I loved them when I was a teenager.
Right. Oh, my God. So good.
And it was a time in pop music that was saturated with pop sensations and boy bands like Backstreet Boys, as well as Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, and J-Lo, just to name a few.
Now, Trolls Band Together will hit Australian cinemas from Boxing Day, a.k.a. December 26th of this year.
We also got a trailer for Wes Anderson's new film, and he's at it again with his unique style of filmmaking and the unmatched ability to assemble the biggest and best cast Hollywood has ever seen.
Honestly, how does he do it? Well, I mean, his products are really good. So,
Yeah.
there's that lure there. Well, Asteroid City is his next witty, kooky, absurd, and wacky visual feast. Insert another adjective here. With the plot set around the itinerary of a junior stargazer convention being spectacularly disrupted by world-changing events.
Yeah, so we mentioned an ensemble cast to rule them all. I'm just going to list some here. We've got Hong Chow, Margot Robbie, Tom Hanks, Hope Davis, Sophia Lillis, Scarlett Johansson, Bryan Cranston, Willem Dafoe, Adrian Brody, Steve Carell, hang on, I need a break, Jeff Goldblum, Tilda Swinton, Matt Dillon, Rupert Friend, and Liev Schreiber.
Honestly, I mean, there's some usual suspects in there that always pop up in a Wes Anderson.
Like Tilda Swinton and...
Like Tilda, the only one.
That's the only one I could think of.
Adrian Brody.
Adrian
shows up
Brody,
in
of
there
course.
a lot.
There's quite a lot of new ones in there. I'm really excited to see Tom Hanks and Steve Carell in a Wes Anderson movie.
And Margot Robbie, which I think is right up her alley.
Yeah.
Very excited by this.
And so looking at the trailer, it's very Wes Anderson in its color palette, in the way it's framed, in the dialogue. And it looks really fun.
It looks really fun. And obviously he chooses something that's mildly mundane. like a Stargazers convention. Yeah, then builds out this really interesting story of quirky characters around it. So that's something that he does really well.
It's all about the quirky characters.
100%.
And the cast of thousands.
Cast of thousands.
So Asteroid City will arrive in Australian cinemas from June 22nd, so we don't have long to wait.
Not long at all, Leigh. Well, we've made it through another jam-packed episode of Popcorn Podcast with Leigh and Tim.
We have indeed. We reviewed Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, which is in Australian cinemas from March 30.
And don't forget to check out our red carpet coverage of the Australian premiere over on YouTube, featuring local stars of the film, Auntie Donna, aka Corpses.
It's a very good time.
As always, friends, thanks so much for listening.
We'll catch you next time. Come and join in the conversation. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram at Popcorn Podcast.